What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Daily Driven Exotics. Behind me is the F12, completely stripped down. We want to start working on the roll cage. To do that, first step, we're going to put this thing up on jack stands. I don't know. Seems okay for now. Maybe not. We just want to shake it a lot.
Yeah, there we go.
No earthquakes, guys. No earthquakes. So this is an aluminum chassis, and a roll cage needs to be steel. Connecting those two is going to be quite difficult. There are a lot of cars actually that have bolted in roll cages in aluminum chassis, and one of them is the Evo 2 race car from Lamborghini. We also have the 550 here that's a steel chassis car with a steel cage welded into it. So we can take a look at those cars, and I can kind of give you guys an idea of the challenges and the differences between both. 1.75" tube, boxes that are welded directly to the sheet metal floor, and then the cage is welded directly to that. So the cage has somewhere to go. The floor pan is just a very thin piece of sheet metal. So you either need a big steel plate down there, which still deforms at times if the car were to roll over. You can put a very, very thick steel plate on top of a very thin steel plate. It's gonna help it out, but it's not really going to stop it from moving. So that's why we build these boxes on the side to where they're on a much thicker part of the chassis. Also, it allows us to build the roll cage, drop the roll cage down, and weld all these top parts because we didn't want to cut the roof off. So sometimes you'll actually cut the entire roof skin off of a car, and that makes welding everything up top really easy. We don't have a carbon fiber roof for this car. No one makes one. We decided to just make these boxes to where we can drop it and move it around. Here is the Huracan aluminum chassis factory Evo 2 race car. Steel roll cage that is bolted in. You can see there's the bolts here, and there's a steel plate down there. And then there's an aluminum box that they've made and raised that up. You can really see how much has come off the floor. It's about 3 inches taller, and you can see in the back also. Those are aluminum boxes with what I'm guessing is a thick piece of aluminum that's threaded. I'm not sure how we're gonna do it yet, if we're gonna do a threaded aluminum or if we're actually going to make a steel plate that's threaded underneath and rivet it in. So we'll have an aluminum piece, steel on the bottom, and kind of sandwich the two. And I think that could actually create a very strong connection point between the cage and the chassis. Dave, what's happening?
Listen to me. I need you to stop what you're doing on the F12. Stop all that. No one cares with the F12. What I need is the 599 ECU sent to EAG for a retune to get slightly more power. The audience wants me to drive on road trips with weird people, old Ferraris that look stock, and they want me to do some clickbait titles. Squadron Course, the AC isn't cold enough. Pause the build.
Can we just do that tomorrow?
It's gonna happen today, guys. This is important. The audience is begging for more road trips with the 599 with weird people.
You're serious? You want us to drop everything on the F12, get the ECUs out, change the motor mounts?
Yeah, I need you to do that because when I'm back, I need a car to drive.
We'll get on it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
No worries. See you soon. Well, that changes everything. He wants us to overnight these ECUs to EAG so he can have them back when he gets back on Monday. It's Thursday. It's like 2, almost 3 o'clock right now. We don't have a lot of time. We got to get them out. Next day air. Once we pull the ECUs out, we can't drive it anymore, obviously, so I want to line it up and get it really close. We just have to push it straight instead of rolling it and trying to crank the steering wheel and all that. So I saw that there was fuel spilling out of the gas door, and I popped it open. And there's a $20 bill in there.
You mean it was completely empty and there's nothing there?
I put that money there so that it would be interesting when I opened it.
Exactly.
That's what happened. I don't think that's supposed to be like that. I think there's a problem there. That's probably why it was spilling out. Yeah. What do you think it would cost from Ferrari?
Probably like $80 or something.
No, it's got to be like $500. Like, it's aluminum with a Ferrari logo on it.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we'll have to call Ferrari and find out how much one of these are.
We'll take 2.
Dave will take 2. So it's already marked that it's a passenger ECU, and do we need anything to take it out or no? I think it just slides in. Well, that's easy enough. Okay, well there's one. Second ECU's out. I think it might actually fit in that box. This is from EAG. Let's see what they sent us. All right.
Oh, Ferrari parts, eh?
Ferrari. I don't think anybody makes these aftermarket. Interesting. I like it's all squishy. Hydraulic rubber mount. So this one has a stud on it. We got to get these ECUs off, get them shipped out, overnighted, stick them in this box securely.
Oh.
You've been summoned. Ready? Let's go.
Okay.
All right, you ready?
No, but let's do it. Come on, we gotta go.
Man, this old Ferrari alarm system is such a pain.
Come on, dude, we gotta go. We got 10 minutes to get it over there before we can't get it to EAG. All right, let's go.
There you go, made it. Shipped successfully, $123 to get it there tomorrow before noon. Now it's up to the shipping company to get it there on time. We can work on the 599. Hopefully that'll be quick. Then we can actually get started on the F12.
This thing looks so good, dude.
It looks so sick. I love this car.
Needs a bit of a wash, though.
It is very dirty. I think all the cars in the shop are in need of a wash.
Yeah. Oh, this thing sounds so cool.
Such a cool car.
Does the horn work?
No,
That's okay. We don't need it.
it's decorational. We just go like this.
Yeah, that gets
That's
it
the
done.
best horn.
Yes!
A little 8,000 RPM V12 rev limiter.
Oh, that sounded
gotta
so
love
cool.
it, man. We are back. Going up.
What's going on with this thing?
I don't really know. Dave said he had problems with it, but he didn't really explain them to me. I'm on like a group chat with him and EAG, and they're like, did you get the parts? And I'm like, what parts? Apparently they're motor mounts and trans mounts, so we're gonna put this thing up in the air and figure out if we can change them. Do we have the tools to do it? I have no idea. And also, this tire is destroyed. Dave was doing some donuts and burnouts and all that kind of stuff, so I think he had a lot of understeer here, and he didn't realize it's probably just full lock going straight, scrubbing those front tires off. And he said that the air conditioning doesn't work in his squad report. And somehow I'm the air conditioning repair guy now. One thing at a time though. Let's see if we can change the mounts on this thing. Motor mount 1. It's not popped yet. Still squishy in there. The guys at EAG said that they were toast. And looking at this, how much it's pushed down, the new factory mount is completely flat. I'm guessing that this whole thing has kind of sunk down in here, and that's what's making this like hydraulic portion of it push out. That header is gonna make it really difficult. Bolt is right here, about a ½ inch away from that tube. I can't get a wrench in here this way, and it's gonna be a really short wrench this way, so if it's tight, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. Let's check the trans mounts, see if they're doable.
Those look a little bit more accessible.
Yeah, but we have to drop this whole crossmember down. And that means we have to take the exhaust off also. This is not that fun. We need a underhoist jack.
The 10th Harbor Freight trip that you guys made in like 2 days.
Do they have like a membership or a punch card? Could we get like free frozen yogurt over there or something like that? Cookies,
Some cookies.
candy, something.
Some Harbor Freight cookies.
Yeah.
We got our underhoist jack, and we managed to pull out one of the engine mounts. That's the old one that's all bulged out on the bottom. That's the new one. And you can also see the difference in the height there. This one has sunken down quite a bit. This is the new mount. It is extremely tight in here, no matter what, but especially with these headers. This is where the mount goes. That's the bolt that bolts into the mount. You can see how tight that is. It barely moves up enough to get flush, to get the mount out. It was super hard to get a wrench in there and a pry bar to basically crack that nut loose. This side is even worse. So we've got the dry sump lines on this side, and the headers are even tighter over here. There's so much stuff we can't get a wrench on this side. Really, the only option is to remove the header. There's no other way around it. And we have to take off the center section of the exhaust to get the transmission mounts changed. So it's going to take a while, 6 or 7 hour job. But like Dave said, car's got to get done. There's some issues with getting the header back on this side. The studs aren't staying in the head. Some of the studs had come out of the head and the nuts stuck on them. So we're gonna try to run a tap through there and clean up that hole, and hopefully we'll be able to get it all back together quickly. There we go. That's much better. So you can see how some of the nuts are like corroded and stuck onto the studs, and some of the studs stayed in the head as they're supposed to. Hopefully we won't have to pull this header off anymore. Working on the F12 now.
Yeah.
So I know, finally, right? We've had some big parts delays. That is holding me up a bit. Ideally, I would have the transmission right now, and I would be fitting it in the car because I don't know if it's actually gonna fit. The factory F12 has the transmission in the back, and it's got quite a long bell housing, but it kind of takes tapers down. It's a big cone. Where the drive shaft comes out of in this area, it's very small. Where the new transmission that we are going to put in the car is very large. We may have to cut the transmission tunnel out of the car and remake a whole new transmission tunnel from scratch, which is going to be a huge challenge. And I wanted to do that first before we started putting any roll cage tubes in the car, because once you have all these tubes in place, it just makes it harder to work on the interior of the car. The transmission is not here 3 weeks past when it was supposed to be delivered. I've already paid in full on my credit card, not on the DDE card. $20,000 is a huge component of this car. The car will not work without it. Stressed out about that. We just need to start on the roll cage and at least start figuring out where the main hoop's gonna go and start bending that up just so we can continue to make progress before these other parts show up. Now that we've completely torn the car apart, like bare chassis, we don't have the issue with the diff hitting the fuel tank anymore, so that's solved, but now we have to figure out where a fuel cell is gonna go. I wanted to put it up here on this shelf where the factory tank was, basically, with a shorter cell that would fit in here and not drop too far down and hit the drive shaft, but there's a brace in here. It looks like a pretty important piece for the rear suspension to keep this tied in. There's a brace that goes back here, and I did not see that brace until we pulled the tank out, but there's another 2-inch or 2.5-inch wide by 1-inch wide aluminum brace that goes across there. There's only about this much room in between those two braces. That's not enough room for a cell. In the front there, it's gonna be really tight if we can find a pre-made fuel cell that will fit there, possibly to get the weight more centralized in the car. The easiest way to do it is obviously drop a fuel cell down here. This is going to be all open, but it does put the weight in the back of the car, and that changes how the car drives. All this weight hanging off the back of the car, you start using up fuel, well, now the weight balance is changing more to the center of the car, more to the front of the car as the fuel gets burned off. So having it centralized helps that quite a bit. Also know that you guys had some good comments about issues we were having with the diff, and you were saying we could take those end caps and flip them upside down. That's a really good idea, but I'll show you why that won't work. Here's the differential. It's a quick change differential, and you can see there's some castings here. So this side is castings, but nothing has been drilled or tapped through there. But on this side, this is a very important part right here. This is actually a pin, and on the end of it, I think is a brass plug or something like that. The ring gear inside of here has so much force being put against it by the pinion gear. So basically it's a big round gear and a small gear that comes in sideways that turns this ring and pinion. As this turns, it tries to separate the gears. It tries to push them apart. And when that happens, you get loose in between the teeth, and that causes teeth to break, bad wear. This basically pushes that ring gear against the pinion and doesn't let it flex. To be able to handle a lot of power, this is really important in that spot because that's where the pinion gear is. So if we did rotate this upside down, that would solve our mounting issues. We'd have the mounts on the bottom and it'd be easy to make a mount for it in the subframe. But unfortunately, you can't rotate them. They have to stay like this. And if you flipped it upside down, now instead of the drive shaft coming in through the bottom, the drive shaft would be coming in through the top. That wouldn't work either. That would mean our transmission and our differential, very, very different planes. We'd have huge drive shaft angles. Plus we'd have to chop a bunch out of the transmission tunnel to make it all fit. That's just not gonna work. This is not roll cage tubing. This is thin wall. We're gonna use this to make a template to build our proper main hoop out of. This is cheap stuff. It's easy to work with. It's quick to bend. It's quick to cut. Most rule books state that you can only have 4 bends in the main hoop. That's gonna be a bend in this area and a bend in this area. So it's gonna be a straight bar across the top. We're gonna try to get it as tight as possible to the roof, allowing a tube to come down the back and all the other tubes that have to be connected to the main hoop, which is really the main component of the roll cage. The main hoop ties everything together. Crucial piece to get right and to fit properly so everything else can line up. I've got this angle ruler here and it is super handy. So it'll tell me how many degrees the bend is. And I'm just gonna put this up here, see what my best guess is of what's gonna fit there. So 150, so it's about 30-degree bend, which looks like it might not be enough. It might hit there first. So we might need a little bit more, 5 degrees. That looks pretty good. I'm gonna bend a piece of tubing and see how it fits and add or remove angle from it to get it to fit how I want. All right, so we're starting the bend, starting at 40 degrees. I'll go look at my measurement that I had and figure out what it's gonna be at the end, and then we'll bend the tube up. You can see this tube and how deformed it is. So you have the wrinkles on the inside because basically it's trying to push the material in. And then on the outside, you've got this flat spot because it's stretching the material out and it's so thin, just collapsing. This is not the material we're using for the roll cage, it's just for the templates. This is just gonna give us a quick idea of what to bend the real tube at. It's gonna sit somewhere around there. This is hitting. When we do a bend for here, we'll have to cut a section of this tube off. And I think that where we're gonna start bending it and where it's gonna land is gonna be really tight there. It's gonna be good. and it's not going to make contact. So I'm going to leave this piece alone for now, bend this other piece, and then see how both of them fit together. For pretty much every race series, they want a 180-degree bend, basically meaning both of these tubes are going to be vertical, plus or minus 10 degrees. Looking pretty good. Mark this tube and cut a section off of it so I can connect these two tubes together. Then I'm going to confirm that I can get a tube to basically land in the center of this joint and go back and down for the rear stays. If we get it up too high, the tube won't fit in here. It's going to hit a bunch of the chassis, and I don't want to cut too much of this out. I might barrel sand a little bit for a little bit of clearance, but I don't want to do too much. We want that to be as tight as possible, as high as possible, but that tube's got to fit. Make a quick mark on here, cut this tube, tack weld them together, and then I'll fit it in again. I have not used this MIG welder before. I've heard it was pretty good. I'm gonna try it out. That looks pretty decent for a $700 welder. Turned a couple knobs, turned it on, and it's working. Hack these pieces together and fit this cage mock-up in the car. Well, that's tacked. Let's go fit it in the car and see if it fits. That looks pretty good. I'm gonna grab another piece of tubing and just make sure that it's gonna fit on the back there at the angle that I want it to. If that's the case, then we can actually transfer this over to a proper piece of tubing, bend out the real part. Well, I'm going to do a quick notch on this tube using the same size hole saw as the tube, so it's 1 3/4 tube. I'm gonna notch it out just to help it fit a little bit better, just to confirm that our main hoop is in the exact right spot. I could just take the square end of the tube and put it up against there and have a decent idea, but it takes a few seconds to cut this with the notcher, and we can really confirm that it'll fit as tight as I want it to. To help me make sure I get this tube straight, I wanna make sure it's not twisted at all, so I know that the bends are gonna work, and I'll check and make sure that the car is sitting flat. We're good there with 0 to 0.1. Take this, put this in there, see which way I need to go with it. That's level, and our bends are looking pretty good there. We might actually put a little bit more bend in this leg and bring it in a touch. We can get this a little tighter up here. We're hitting it down here, and that's holding the tube a little bit farther away from that corner that I want. So that's a little bit too tight, so we're gonna have to come down a touch to get this tube to fit in here. The notch actually looks really perfect. Just a small change on the angle of the main hoop. We'll add a couple degrees to that, and I think we'll be good to go. Let me put it in the car and see how it looks. I think that's too much. You kicked it over way too far. Around 0 there, but this is just too far in. I want it to land about 1 inch over there. So we'll take a little bend out of this one. Careful. All right, so yeah, we took 2.5 degrees out of that bend. See how it looks in the car. So I think I'm happy with that. We should be good with our tube here. Yeah, we're good. Now I need to mark the exact center. So I'll measure the car and measure the center of the roof and make a mark, and then I can put a mark in the middle of the tube, and then I'll have half the distance of the main hoop and just be able to double that and then bend up the actual tube. So 58 inches, and we will double it.
Jeez, Mike, how long is this thing?
22 feet, I think.
How did you get that? Did you get it delivered or did you take it in the truck?
Got it delivered. I'm gonna cut that tube with a Sawzall because it's just too big to manage at 22 feet. I'll make a rough cut with the Sawzall, and then we clean it up in the chop saw. Found a use for the forklift tires.
Nice.
good to go. Someone's gonna comment about how good of a job I'm doing cleaning this tube, I'm sure. So back over at the 599, Tim needs some help with the trans mounts, and now I see why. Very difficult to get off. It is super tight, 27mm nut up on top. There's not much room, so we pulled the back brace off as well as the transmission mount brace. Both those are gone, and the transmission is about 2 inches lower than it normally sits in the car. Still doesn't want to come off. There's like no room to get any leverage here, so we've got the biggest 1/2-inch wrench we can fit into the car. There's no way to crack it loose. Go back to the pry bar and see if we can get it off of that. That's gonna slip. So now we're basically sitting on the axles. So we cannot come down anymore. I don't think it's gonna work through there. There's enough angle in it, but I don't think there is. No. I thought this was supposed to be easy.
It's a good thing we're doing it after we
After the transmission was out of the car last week. Well, this side came loose. We have a little bit more room on this side.
I wonder if they're the same mark. And they're not.
Whew. Got a quarter turn there. There we go. Okay. Okay, let me grab the other mount. Okay, there we go. Whew. Put it back together and I'll go make a roll cage. I've got my tube marked up where the bends are, which side of the line I'm gonna bend on so I don't mix that up. Hopefully I'll get it right and not have to do this again and not waste a piece of tubing. This tube is gonna have a bit more spring back, so I'm gonna bend this one and adjust it to basically get it to the 55 degrees, figure out if it's 3 or 4 or 5 degrees overbent to basically spring back to 55 degrees. So I'll check that on this one and then I can replicate it on the other side. I'm looking at this tube and how much is coming back before this tube starts to shift as well. I'm barely loading it in the machine so there's not any extra pressure on it, showing that it has more bend when it actually doesn't. That looks like we're within a 1/2 degree. We should be good there. So we will bend the other one the same, basically to 99 degrees is what we bent this. So we'll bend the other one the same. All right, so we're gonna double check our pattern onto the tube that we just bent. So I've got my center line mark here, and I've got a center line on here. Lay this out and see how it's looking. It looks like we are a bit wider than I had intended, so I can adjust that. I can basically move this center line mark and move those over so we don't have a tube that ends up too wide. So I'll make a couple adjustments, remark that side, and then we'll be able to bend it up. All right, so I'm gonna use the angle finder here also to make sure that both of these bends are on the same plane so we don't end up with legs that are crooked. Everything goes well, this thing will drop right in the car and fit nice and tight. If it doesn't, well, this is gonna become a piece of scrap metal and we'll have to start over again and figure out what I did wrong. Double checking that the bends match up, nice and tight. Those look good, so we'll move on, bend our other two bends and have a main hook. Our template lays right over the top of it. Obviously this has a bunch of creases and weird stuff in it, but both of the legs are lined up. Looks good. So we'll bend the other side and do a test fit. All right, last one is bent. Let's see how it fits in the car. That's looking pretty good. The legs are quite a bit longer than I need. It's a whole lot easier to have extra tubing at the end and slowly trim it off to fit as tight as you would want it. These bends are looking good. It's a bit high right now, so it'll come down just a touch after we trim these legs and pull it in a little bit.
So what are all of the pieces to the roll cage?
Standard 6-point roll cage is a main hoop, and then so each of these would be 1, 2 points. The 2 that come from here to the back, so another 2 points. And then we've got one that runs next to the driver's head down to floor over here. 2 points, making it a 6-point cage. But then inside of there, you would have a diagonal that would come from the passenger floor, basically, and go up to the point right above the driver's head. You got a harness bar that's going to go across the middle, and the harness bar is going to be 2 pieces. The diagonal bar will be 1 piece because that's the strongest. And if the car rolls over, you want this point to be the strongest because that's right above the driver's head. We've got that. We've got the down tubes. We can also put a brace across the back between the shock towers. Coming up here, we've got door bars. You can have an X-style door bar. You can have what's called NASCAR bars, which are usually 2 or 3 bars that are parallel with tubes running in between them. I was looking at comparison between the 599, which is basically the older generation of the F12, right? It's the V12 lineage. They said this car was somewhere like 110 pounds lighter just in the chassis from the 599, 20 something or 30% stiffer. So they actually lightened the car and made it stiffer. It's pretty crazy how much engineering goes into it. It's not just like, all right, just grab some aluminum and start bending it up and build it out. They really thought about where they could save the weight, what material was the best in that spot, and then welded it or bonded it all together. It's looking good. I'm happy with the first part of the roll cage. 1 piece out of about 20 pieces for the roll cage, done. Tim got the 599 all back together, minus the ECUs. Those are supposed to show up Monday morning. Dave's coming back Monday morning. Hopefully we'll get the ECUs before he gets here. The parts that we're waiting for on the F12 still stressing me out, but it is what it is for the time being. I can't really do anything about it. We'll be working on the F12, getting the roll cage stuff done as much as possible, and I hope that we'll have an update about these parts next time. Thank you guys for watching.